State report, which cites gross human rights abuses, attack on free speech, and arbitrary killings as incidents tainting Ghana's democratic experiment.
The rights of journalists have not been imploded upon by the government of President Nana Akufo-Addo. Neither have we suppressed the expression of free speech. So I would want us to discredit the report that is coming from the U.S. State Department.
We have details as stakeholders describe as an indictment the findings of the report. Also, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta upbeat about Ghana's chances of securing an IMF deal as soon as possible as he continues to woo external creditors. Also in this bulletin, former President John Mahama has taken on government for its failure to deliver campaign promises to Ghanaians more, as he says the NPP lacks the competent leadership to enhance the fortunes of the country. And later in entertainment, reigning artist of the year, Kiddy addresses false stories of stroke by what he calls bad actors in comeback video as he returns to do music. If you stay with us over the next 30 minutes, we'll have details of these stories and more. I appreciate that you could join us this afternoon from wherever you are. Let's begin from here. Details of a 2022 U.S. State Department report citing gross human rights violations, attack on free speech, and arbitrary killings in Ghana have been discredited by government. The latest report, among others, also highlights corruption and a decline in civil liberties of citizens as issues requiring urgent attention. Government has already been dismissing some of the concerns raised by the U.S. Department of State report. We'll hear from Palgrave Boakye Dankwa. He's a government spokesperson on governance and security shortly. But first, here is a report capturing the key components of the latest report. The 2022 U.S. Department of State report has once again brought to the fore some of these issues of great concern. Corruption and lack of transparency remain a huge challenge for Ghana as state agencies fail to apply penalties to individuals and political actors who were involved in corrupt practices. A number of reports have shown this. The U.S. State Department cites, for example, a report including the Ghana Integrity Public Services Survey in July, which found corrupt practices resulted in more than 5 billion cedis in losses. Again, the controversial La Bianca matter, in which improper issuance of customs advance rulings and markdowns of benchmark values by the Ghana Revenue Authority Customs Division led to loss in revenue to the state, as well as other investigations relating to public procurement processes in government offices and agencies. Some of these incidents are being investigated by the Special Prosecutor's Office. There is also the 2021 Auditor General's report, which found in excess of 1.08 billion cedis was lost in terms of revenue leakages in government agencies.
We have a common goal that we need to fight to make sure that every cedi is accounted for.
The report also indicates a decline in civil liberties and a seeming clampdown on free speech, also in the matter relating to the arrest of civil advocate Oliver Barker-Vormawor.
I have used the word coup in my write-up for so long. Now, in this particular way, the state decided to arrest. That's fine. But the most important thing for me is that I want my day in court.
The Fix the Country convener was slapped with misdemeanor charges for making false statement via his Facebook page, charges which would later be upgraded to treason felony, and was held in prison for 35 days without bail. The U.S. Department of State is also particularly concerned about the deprivation of life and the politically motivated state killings. Now, we here at TV3 have variously covered stories about individuals dying in police custody and suspects allegedly dying in shootout with the police and others. We remember Albert Donko of Nkranza, who was allegedly killed while in police custody, which sparked spontaneous protest among young people in the area. The MP for the area petitioned a number of agencies, including the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, SHRAJ, for some action on this subject.
The media should be with us for us to have the truth in this whole matter.
In Elemmele, 33-year-old Andrew Donko died in a police clash with the youth over illegal mining-related activities at Teleco Bokazo. The U.S. Department of State found that no conclusion whatsoever has been found to these incidents and many others in the last 1 year. Of significant importance to the U.S. Department of State is the issue of censorship or content restriction by some media organizations. They recalled the matter involving the Kumasi Traditional Council's order for Oyepa FM to shut down after some comments on illegal mining were made on a radio program there. The report also found that national security officials harassed and sometimes arrested journalists in their line of duty. Political activists also variously attacked some media personnel in the line of duty. The report does not forget that the 8 people who were killed during the elections in 2020 have remained without justice. Their families continue to grieve. And for this, the police service has since failed to give any status updates on investigations, if any, on this particular development. So those are some of the highlights of the U.S. Department of State's report 2022 on human rights in Ghana. We can now hear from Palgrave Boakye Dankwa. He is government spokesperson on governance and security. He's been reacting to the latest report.
The rights of journalists have not been imploded upon by the government of President Nana Akufo-Addo. Neither have we suppressed the expression of free speech. No single record of any government official either suppressing any journalist or even civil society organization. So I would want us to discredit the report that is coming from the U.S. State Department and really also state that as a country, we are aware of the issues that we are facing. We are aware of people that have gone against the Constitution. We are aware of people that have infringed upon the rights of citizens, and those persons are before either the law courts or have been invited by the police. And so these are things that we're already working in within our system.
Have you cited the report?
I have. I've actually read through all of that. I mean, and so
if you have the report copiously cites examples of infringement on people's liberties, the arrest of some journalists. It talks about the case of Vaka Bomawo, who was detained for more than 30 days without trial. And you know the laws. That shouldn't happen in a democratic country. So what are you talking about?
You lose sight of the treasonable statement that Vomoyo made.
And the court of law determined that the comments he made were treasonable?
Very, very treasonable. I mean, so Vomoyo was picked by the Ghana police service.
Mr. Palgrave, I asked you a question. You said he made treasonable comments, and I'm asking if those statements you refer to as treasonable were determined by the law courts.
Why was Vomoyo picked in the first place and detained before courts? While he was behind bars for those number of days, he was facing the law courts and going in and out of the law court. Vomowo clearly is not even an example because he's thrown everything away as it relates to the rights of an individual.
So beyond Vomowo, they also raised several issues. For instance, the killings during the elections, which still are unaccounted for. Are you saying you find no reason at all in any of the claims made in the latest report by the U.S. State Department?
Well, these killings that they refer to, we're already aware that there were election disturbances in a number of regions in this country, which has been investigated upon. And so these are not things that we would need the U.S. State Department to come and tell us about.
So of all that the report stated, is there anything the government finds reasonable to work on?
Government has always been in a continuum, and we have always been looking at the issues that have arisen, from the issues that they raised, journalists and Vomowo and election, 8 people that died and all of that. Even sometime this week, those conversations have arisen again. And these are issues that are within the state agencies. And so state agencies are clearly responsible for that. I mean, the Ghana Police Service is responsible for the investigation. The law court is there to bring justice. And so these are state institutions that are clearly responsible in ensuring that these matters come to rest.
You heard the Palgrave Boakye Dankwa, government spokesperson on governance and security, speaking in that extensive conversation with my colleague Pakwesi Asare. But for security analysts, the findings relating to arbitrary killings and lack of prosecution of suspects, plus failure of a state to ensure justice for the 8 persons killed during election 2020 are a dent on the country's international outlook. Adib Sani is CEO of the Jatike Center for Human Security and Peace Building.
We have seen all of these play out in our face. Amen. So I will be surprised if anyone sticks or debunks this. See what happened at Ayawaso West Warborn. So there's impunity. People were hurt. Nobody, even though a body made up of very respectable people in society was put together to look into the issue. And from day one, I said, look, this thing is political. Don't pay attention to it. Then at the point, we paid attention to it. And in the end, what happened to the report? It was simply tossed into the bin. So this is damning. And it gives us the opportunity to get introspective because the impunity is just unbelievable.
You heard there Adib Sani, security analyst, CEO of Jatike Center for Human Security and Peace Building. Away from that, global leaders have been in Washington since Monday for this year's spring meetings with the aim to finding solutions to the pressing economic challenges in Ghana. But for Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta and his team, their mission is to use the opportunity to convince Ghana's external creditors to agree to a debt restructuring as the country scrambles for an IMF bailout. Luck appears to be on the side of a team as development partners are advocating for Ghana to get the needed financing assurances. Mr. Ofori-Atta is hopeful the solidarity will convince the creditors to support Ghana come out of a storm.
Regards to our conversations with external creditors, our discussions with the fund and our development partners have been marked by a clear understanding of the need to restore macroeconomic and financial stability to Ghana and to promote our economic recovery as quickly as possible. We have highlighted the importance of revenue mobilization, expenditure control, and the implementation of decisive reforms to kickstart our growth. Encouragingly, there's broad alignment with the international community that our policy orientation is not only proactive but also well anchored, and we are convinced that they should support our overall ambitions in this regard. We are advancing our discussions with our international bondholders and other external commercial creditors. Earlier today, as you know, we hosted a successful webcast informing our commercial creditors of our economic and financial situation, while also highlighting the broad contours of Ghana's debt restructuring strategy. Our domestic debt holders have made significant sacrifices towards helping to reduce Ghana's debt servicing needs, and we are encouraging our commercial and foreign holders to also step up and contribute to the effort in the spirit of burden sharing. On the roadmap to an IMF board approval and beyond, in relation to the fund program, on the government side, we have made significant progress and have completed all prior actions agreed to with the fund. Additionally, the Paris Club has met and continues to meet to discuss the delivery of financing assurances. Based on our engagements, we expect these financing assurances to come in the next couple of weeks, thereby enabling Ghana's program to be presented to the IMF board for approval soon after that. Today's webcast was to engage our investors for.
You have there an optimistic Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. The big question, however, remains whether the creditors will deliver the financing assurances in time to save a pained economy or an economy which is already in shatters. Meanwhile, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta says China has pledged to deliver its financing assurance to Ghana in the coming weeks to help secure board approval for the much talked about bailout program. He, however, did not comment on China's reported rejection to co-chair the creditor committee. This afternoon, former President John Mahama has described the governing New Patriotic Party's mantra of "We have the men" as station boys, taking the government on over failed promises and the mismanagement of the economy, which has led us to seek an IMF program. The 2024 flag bearer hopeful of the NDC refuted claims that he left power generation deficit under his administration. He was speaking to delegates in Kpong Katamanso on his first day of its Greater Accra regional tour.
In 2016, our colleagues, the MPP, told a lot of lies about us. They labeled us as incompetent. And they came with a lot of big and sweet promises to the people of Ghana and used that to persuade people that there will be a better government than we were. The people of Ghana tried them by voting for them. And that was the mistake the people of Ghana made, because we have come to realize that after all, we have the men. It was station boys. They don't know anything. If you take our ministers who were running this country in 2016 and compare with their ministers who are running Ghana today, pound for pound, our ministers were far better than any of them. Doomsday was not created by us. It was the lack of generation capacity over the years. And so when we came into office, we were confronted with it. We did not run away. We did not shift the blame to somebody. I could have said President Rawlings and Kufuor and President Mills did not add new generation. That's why. But what we did was we took responsibility. I went to Parliament, I said, yes, okay, you elected us to take responsibility. We take responsibility and we shall fix it. And truly, by the time we left in 2016, we have fixed the Doomsday. Now they've come and destroyed everything. So they speak from both sides of their mouths. One village, one dam, one district, one factory. Most of those factories are not even working. And so it's just a hoax. It was just to persuade Ghanaians. They touted their economic management team. What a solid team. Now look at it.
You had the 2024 flag bearer hopeful of the NDC, John Mahama, his first day of a tour of the Greater Accra region. We still stay in the realm of politics, but let's cross over to the Ashanti region, because nominations for the governing New Patriotic Party's parliamentary primaries in the Kumewu constituencies are closing later today. As of yesterday, Thursday, April 13, some 8 persons had picked forms to contest to represent the NPP in the upcoming by-elections. Meanwhile, some electorates in Kumewu say they have no motivation to cast their vote in the coming by-election. Their reason is past and present governments have failed to honor promises of job creation and infrastructure development. William Evans Inkum has been monitoring events in Kumewu. He will join us for the latest, but let's listen to some of the concerns raised by the youth.
Yesenya MP na wawu ni nti o mo baye ba election no mo akwose samfidie dia besi kura mu se wo mo ba baye kwai se yani abre ya hu se kura wo mu di enya mo ye adwe se yani afirafira se de Mahama ka se o short memory no sa short memory ni bi no ana mo de be sesa mo machines ya mo de koye no ite se ne ye short memory ni asesa ne de foforo atum ho ke kan ye de to aba no se ye NDC for na to a ho ke kan wo soro MPP for na to a ho ke kan wo soro ba se de e ba fom ye ha wo nyina ne se yempenifo no omba no omo promise ye ne a no ma failure.
You heard there's some of the constituents in Kumewu speaking, basically saying they have no motivation to participate in the upcoming by-election. They say the past and present representatives have failed them over the period, and so there's absolutely no reason to queue up to vote in the upcoming by-election. Let's take a flight to Kumasi, speak to William Evans Inkum, my colleague, who has been touching base with the residents there. Evans, it would appear the concerns or the sentiments of those who heard sums up the general mood of people in Kumewu, not so?
Absolutely, because they appear to be tired about, promises made to them, but yet they are not realized. And Komla, I can tell you that it has also reflected in the vote pattern, because if you look at 2020, out of a total registered voters of 35,133, and don't forget that 2020, because of the COVID, there were other people who were not, members of the community, but because one way or the other, some were schooling, some were also doing other stuff here. They were registered here to vote in the Kumewu constituency. That even inflated the figures. Now, guess what? 29,648 people voted. And if you speak to the constituency executive, they tell you that it was a sharp decline of 2016, where a total number of 28,022 people voting in the Kumewu constituency. In terms of the nominal figures, there were some sharp decline. And you tell, it tells you the level of, discontentment, the level of dissatisfaction that the youth
find themselves at the moment because of government not fulfilling promises. And they're also saying that in the by-election, they feel reluctant because promises made to them are yet to be fulfilled.
Tell us about the picking of nomination forms and the subsequent processes for filing. I remember when I spoke to you yesterday, you mentioned that some 8 or so individuals had picked the forms, including a former MP for the constituency. Do we know if filing has begun yet?
It has. Currently, NSC, our name, close ally of the late MP, came in with numbers. A chunk of them are supporters of the late MP, and they have thrown their support behind him. And he filed not too long ago, promising that all the gaps will be filled. All the promises that were supposed to have been fulfilled will be fulfilled if he voted as or if he voted to lead the party and also goes on to win the by-election.
Thank you very much, William Evansinku, my colleague there from the Kumewu constituency, which is expecting to hold a by-election in the coming weeks because of the passing of certain MP for the area, Philip Baswa. Now, the Senior Staff Association of the University of Cape Coast says members will not back down their indefinite action until their grievances are resolved. The local chapter of the association declared an indefinite strike over, among others, poor conditions of service and promotion. The members are simply unhappy over delays on the part of management of the university to resolve certain pertinent issues, including negotiated allowances and their conditions of service. Chairman of a Senior Staff Association of the University of Cape Coast, Sandy Kumi Sinatra, has been telling my correspondent Thomas Khan members will not resume work until the grievances are resolved. We know that it is not the first time the staff are raising some concerns about their conditions of service and allowances which have not been paid them. We can now hear from him.
We declared a strike yesterday, but of course, since most of them were already at work and probably going back will be a bit challenging for them, so they need to stay on to finish yesterday's work and also to some extent clear their table. But for today, it being Friday 14th of April, that's why I've come around to monitor the compliance level. And I might tell you that I'm very, very satisfied with the level of compliance by our members. And we will continue to urge to continue to stay home for us. It is in their best interest.
You heard the chairman of a Senior Staff Association of the University of Cape Coast, Sandy Kumi Sinatra, speaking to correspondent Thomas Khan, who is joining us on the telephone for the latest on this. Thomas, perhaps it's early day yet, but has the strike begun taking full effect? Hello, Thomas.
Hi.
Has the strike begun taking full effect, and are we seeing the impact already?
Komla, so when you come to the University of Cape Coast campus, the strike has begun in earnest, like what the leadership of the association described. But what we observe here is that examination is ongoing, all right. But some of the students are not even aware there's a strike because when you talk about the Senior Staff Association, it's cut across all sort of people within the staff of the campus. So you get junior workers and then some national service also filling in for those who are absent. But on the reality, the senior staff members didn't come to work today.
Okay, I know you've been speaking to some of the students. What's been the general sentiments among them?
Well, for them, they think that government should pay heed to whatever grievances that these members are saying. And again, one student, for instance, a master's student, told me that she had come to campus to get some service or to get some work done for her. But unfortunately, because the strike is ongoing, she didn't get those services.
I'm a master's student, and I'm currently on my thesis, second year, so I come to campus when I have to come and meet my supervisor, and currently I have to meet my supervisor. So if they are on strike, then it means that they are not even going to come to the office, and it's official work. You can't just barge in somebody's house. So if other MPhil students are also coming to meet their supervisors and lecturers are on strike, then it means that they might come, but their journey might not be a successful one because they might not meet their supervisors.
You heard one of the students of the University of Cape Coast there speaking about the challenges she's already facing as a result of a strike by the Senior Staff Association of the University of Cape Coast. You're still listening to the Midday News here on 3FM 92.7. Environmental civil society organizations have called on the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources to, as a matter of urgency, suspend community mining ongoing in different parts of the country without further delay. We know that government instituted the community mining program sometime in 2019 aimed at formalizing the mining sector to deal with galamsey. However, 4 years on, the CSO say the initiative has been more destructive than the galamsey itself. In a petition to the Deputy Lands and Natural Resources Minister George Mrekuduka, a civil society groups lamented the devastation community mining has caused to cocoa farms, especially in the western and western north regions, threatening livelihoods. Joining us on the phone is Awula Sewa, founder and coordinator for Eco-Conscious Citizens Ghana, one of the CSOs that signed this particular petition. Thank you for joining us, Ma. So, what are your expectations from this petition that you have presented?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. Well, what it is that the Deputy Minister himself, deplored the way cocoa farms were being destroyed because of community mining. So we are saying that this is a step in the right direction. So it's not just a question of deploring the felling of cocoa trees, but it's a question of revoking the licenses, putting a pause on community mining, because we face a clear and present danger. Our waters are being polluted, the landscape is being compromised, and cocoa trees are being felled. One cannot see any useful benefits in what is going on right now. So we think that the best thing to do at this time is to have a pause on community mining, because as we can all see, the monitoring regime is very weak. And in terms of effects, it seems to have the same effects as galamsey. So this is the point we are pressing home.
All right. And briefly, before I let you go, is there any point at all where you'd expect that without any results or action taking on your petition, you take any further steps?
Well, what is happening right now is that a lot of public-spirited organizations have taken steps. The people of Atronsu, for example, have taken court action. The people in Mantukwa are also pursuing matters. So what is happening right now is that at this stage, we are calling on the authorities to do the right thing. Ghana belongs to all of us. There's no point in poisoning the beautiful land that God has given us.
Thank you very much. Awula Sewa is founder and coordinator of Eco-Conscious Citizens Ghana, one of the CSOs that has signed the petition and presented to the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources.
Shut up and bend over. Let your back do the talking over. So back up and bend over. Let your back do the talking over. Say.
And you know, the reigning VGMA Artist of the Year, Kitty, has been on a sort of hiatus in the last few weeks. Well, he has broken his silence over what he describes as false stories about his health by a section of Ghanaians on the internet. So we know Kitty, 29 years, who had some health complications prior to his US tour, earlier was rumored to have suffered a debilitating illness, probably a stroke, which caused him to cancel his tour. Well, in a response to the stories and the ongoing debates about his health, the hip life and Afrobeats artist has debunked the rumors, describing them as false. Addressing his fans and the public in a recent Instagram post, Kitty stated, quote, "Unfortunately, a few bad actors took this as an opportunity to spread false stories that got a lot of you very concerned. While I do not want to give it any more attention, I want to categorically address that those stories were false." Kitty shared that he had to take time off social media to take care of himself, but during this time, he was overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support he received from his family, friends, fans, and the brands he works with. And we can only wish Kitty all the best, and we continue to hope that he will give us great music as he continues to do, and we wish him all the best in his bid to win more awards at the 2024 or 24th edition of the Vodafone Ghana Music Awards, slated for May 6. Of course, it will be on TV3 Live. You want to catch all the action and the pre-events that have been lined up. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. If you log on to 3news.com, you find a lot more stories. And Anekia Mensah Brampa is up next with the latest in business.
Shut up and bend over. Let your back do the talking over. So back up and bend over. Let your back do the talking over. Say, I want to chop my life. I want to be happy. I want to dance and party. Feel the rhythm of my body. At the penna, Lord of mercy. Made the Makumama win FIFA. One drum the 80s, sorry, sound the trance. I'm a sunkran, I'm a domo.
And that was the birthday boy with the midday news, Komla Adom. Thank you so much. Thank you for staying with us on 3FM 92.7. Time for Business Daily with me, Nana Ikuya Mensah Abrampa. Coming up this afternoon, Finance Minister hints of another round of domestic debt restructuring, and we will tell you why. Also, we'll be telling you about the top drivers of inflation that are above the national average, plus the latest updates from Washington, D.C. at the ongoing IMF World Bank spring meetings. You want to stay with us in the next 10 minutes for the details. Thank you for your time. Now to the details. There are indications that government may embark on another round of domestic debt restructuring. This was hinted by Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta during a presentation to stakeholders on macroeconomic development and the upcoming public debt restructuring as part of the ongoing spring meetings of the World Bank and the IMF in Washington, D.C. But why will government be compelled to engage in another round of domestic debt restructuring?
Following a rather protracted domestic debt restructuring, it will appear almost impossible for government to suggest another round of domestic debt exchange program. But through business interactions with some economists and finance experts suggest this may not be surprising after all. Government, as part of its long-term goal of reducing Ghana's debt to GDP ratio to 55% of GDP in 2028, as presented to the International Monetary Fund, targeted to restructure about 137 billion cedis of domestic debt. Out of this number, the government only managed to restructure 98 billion cedis. Even with that, not all persons exchange their old bonds for newer ones. In total, this only represents less than half of the country's total debt. Ghana's total public debt was 467.4 billion cedis, of which 42% was domestic debt. Three businesses now learning that there are attempts to restructure about 123 billion cedis of domestic debt, and amongst the instruments to be affected are pension fund holdings, cocoa bills, US dollar local bonds, local currency loans, and government debts to the Bank of Ghana, all totaling 123 billion cedis. The minister, according to reports, has maintained treasury bills will not be affected. This will come as a shock to many who continue to wonder why government has failed to take a share of the burden by cutting down on expenditure, which includes the size of government and other policy measures that will significantly reduce costs. However, this will not affect our chances of securing a deal with the International Monetary Fund.
On to some updates still from Washington, D.C. on the spring meetings. Private lenders are awaiting documentation on Ghana's debt from the Finance Ministry to consider the portion of their debts that could be restructured. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta said the lenders acknowledged Ghana's challenges and have expressed willingness to help tackle the situation.
Acknowledgement that we have done considerably well with regard to the domestic debt exchange program, and they are now waiting on receiving all sorts of documentation to enable them give us the proposal. So I think we've started on the right foot, very collaborative, and we expect in the same way in which we engage the Paris Club, that will have an engagement that would result in the country being on a stronger footing, and they also burden sharing like all others.
And that was the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, there. Now, only 3 out of 15 top items with the highest rate of inflation were above 100%. The rate of inflation for the month of March reduced by some 7 percentage points to 45%, according to the Ghana Statistical Service. There's more in this breakdown. Inflation might have dropped sharply from 52.8% in February to 45% in March, but if you still spend regularly on some of the household items we have listed as the top 15 drivers of inflation, then your rate of inflation for these items you purchase will remain much higher than the 45%, which is the current national average. Let's go through the top 5, and our locally produced shelled granules still remains the highest. From the month of January, the item has an inflation rate of 114%. This is followed by red palm oil with a rate of 109.3% and imported washing soap at 101.6%. Items for preparation of stews and other delicacies, namely sunflower cooking oil and coconut oil, also fell within a bracket of 99.7% and 98.5% respectively. And when you move to the next table, we have sanitary pads and women underwear also falling in the bracket, while local food items, groundnut oil and fish having an inflation rate of between 81 and 85%. This means the price of your fish for Kinky remains high above the national average, as it has recorded a rate of 81.4%. And for your instant noodles, goat meat for jollof and soups, your bathing soap, baby food and ice cream all recorded inflation rates between 75% and 78%. respectively. It means that depending on how often you use these items, your expenses will remain high as your rate of inflation is higher than the national average. And so you know the top 15 drivers that accounted for the high rate of inflation, which is actually higher than that of the national average. Well, you would want to get more news on our website. It's 3news.com. That's it for Business Daily this afternoon with me, Nana Ikuya Mensah Brampa. Black Rasta is next on your radio. Enjoy your lunch and have a good day.